All right, guys. So we're all set. Welcome back to United We Taste. I can't believe it. We made it to a 6 week straight. So thank you all who've been tuning in live with us or watching the recaps. And we've been tackling rule number one. Mute the YouTube. I learned that the first week and I'm still making the same mistakes. But yes, so sorry. This is the 5th week. Last week was our 4th week. We celebrated by doing all Californian wines. So thank you guys who've been holding on tight with us. And we decided to do something special and switch it up because the beverage industry is beyond just wine. And I even shared a bit about my sake experience during my tasting, during my certified sommelier exam in Charleston a couple of years ago when, my examiner threw me a monkey wrench and started asking me about sake service and started asking me about sake right in the middle while I was holding our imaginary champagne or our champagne to my
That'll throw you for a loop.
I think it was weird because I was just kind of like, I was expected to see it maybe on a multiple choice, a theory question, but not like in the middle while I'm like trying to keep my composure, open to sparkling wine. And then he's like, oh, so tell me about your sake list. And I was like, what? I was like, how do you like keep your same face? I'm like, okay.
During my advanced examination, I got the same, but it was cider. Like, how do you pour cider? It's like, oof, sake would have been much easier for me.
That's probably why they gave me the sake question and you the cider one. But I thought it was something that I never forgot that moment. And I think that when we talk about just wine, and I know a lot of you have wine background like myself first before you got into sake, and we'll get into that. But I thought that that's why it was important not to wait till episode 101, let's start talking about sake. I think that, or any other spirit for that matter, when you study in wine. But those who are studying wine to be a sommelier in the future or interested, you have to be a well-rounded beverage, person, professional. And so the earlier we start introducing things like sake into our programming, or just looking out to who to reach out to, it was just, to be honest, this is one of the hardest ones that I had to produce because I didn't have sake professionals in my back pocket, unlike wine professionals to even coordinate with. So I'm happy to know you all. And again, for those who are new to this page, who are friends and family of you guys, my name is McCoy. I'm a certified sommelier from New York City. I'm being quarantined in New York. I currently live in Lisbon, Portugal. I am also a wine experience producer, and I do wine tourism as well in Portugal. So I'm going to let Monica take it from here, introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Monica Samuels. I'm the director of sake and spirits for Vine Connections. We are an importer of Japanese sake and South American wines. We do about 50% of each. And I'm half Japanese. I spent a lot of my childhood in Japan. My grandfather was actually a sake producer, and I've been working with sake for the last 15 years on all sides of the business. I was the corporate beverage director for a very sake-focused restaurant group in the United States. I worked for the country's largest alcohol distributor as their director of sake for 6 years, and I've been in this role for 6.5 years now.
Jean-Louis?
Hi. Well, I'm Jean-Louis. I've been in London now well over 20 years. I've been involved in sake for nearly, almost as long as I've been in London. So as a sommelier, I was the head wine and sake sommelier for famous Japanese restaurants for 10 years straight, and was also involved opening my own company to import wines and distribute sake. So I've got all this mixed background also with retail and restaurants, and just basically love chasing and finding great products. Also involved with sake competitions, with the London Sake Challenge, where I'm a co-chairman, where I was last year, and hopefully this year we won't be able because of the conditions, but hopefully we'll do a big one next year, since everything Japan related, like the Olympics and so on, everything is now postponed for next year. So hopefully we'll have a lot of celebration for the sake world as well next year. And that's it. Yeah. So basically, I just keep chasing for great products and finding clients, which are a bit difficult at the moment. But we have online sales, so we always have a plan B.
Perfect.
And people obviously go for that.
Jean-Louis' information, and so is everyone else's, is right on the website where you found this link. So if there's sales or hiring for education, please go straight to the website. Eduardo?
Hi, my name is Eduardo Dingler. I was born and raised in Mexico, so naturally got pushed into sake. No, not really, really far from it. But I ended up in Napa, California 20 years ago, following wine. And wine was my entryway into finding sake, and started getting into it about 15 years ago, more for pleasure. And then I was hired for the Morimoto restaurant group to lead the beverage program. And I just fell in love with sake, the culture, everything about Japan, which makes it feel like home. From there, I've been doing a lot of education, still working a lot with wine. I'm a vice president of wine for Wine Access, and also write for a few publications and promote sake as much as I can, doing some things with Som TV. And I feel like everybody needs to find the right sake. For some people that say, I don't like sake, it's like, no, you haven't had the right one. But hopefully that'll be the case, and people will stuck it in their fridge on a daily basis. So, cheers to you guys. And I'm a huge fan of Monica, and she, as long as with other people I know, have been a huge part of me falling in love with sake. So, cheers.
Cheers, everyone, before we get into this. So, if this is your first week joining us, then maybe you don't know, but we normally go into some deep conversation about the industry before we start tasting. But we're not going to let anybody wait this time. We're going to go straight into tasting the sake, because I think more of the viewers usually don't know too much about sake to start with. So let's actually start, like, kind of integrate the conversation with the tasting. And if everyone, I'm going to go last. So whoever's willing to go first, if you could just show your.
I want to know what Monica's drinking.
Oh, what Monica's drinking. Go ahead, Monica.
Thank you, Eduardo-san. So I'm drinking a unpasteurized sake. It's a seasonal spring release from Fukucho Brewery in Hiroshima. It's this, so seasonal spring namazake is a very special time in Japan. Japan traditionally has 24 seasons. So it can be very poetic in trying to identify every time of the year and what kind of sake you should be drinking and what kind of state of mind you should be in. And the fresh pressed sake is coming out in the late winter, early spring, coincide with the cherry blossoms emerging in Japan. And it's this really like magical time of the year. And we try to really recreate it as much as possible in the United States with doing events with Brooklyn Botanical Gardens and the cherry blossoms in Washington, DC, and doing a lot of on-premise features. And as you can imagine, all of that is ground to a halt. But I ordered these unpasteurized sakes for the country at the end of 2019. So I have like 1,000 cases of unpasteurized sake that I'm trying to figure out what to do with.
That you're personally going to finish, huh?
I'm going to do my best. So I've been drinking a lot of it at home. This is made by one of the only female master brewers in Japan. As you can imagine, I'm sure there are a lot of people watching who don't have a lot of experience with sake, but I think that the world has this fascination with Japanese culture and they're kind of romanced by it right now. And you can probably imagine that gender equality in the workplace is not something that Japan really excels at, especially in agriculture and farming and brewing. And this woman is in her late 50s and she's been brewing sake for 35 years. And she's really paved the way for a lot of other younger women. And she's also the 5th generation owner of her brewery. And she's just a massive perfectionist. I've been working with her sakes for a long time now. I used to buy her sakes, and I know Eduardo has supported her for a very long time as well. And I really think that every bottling that I get tastes better than the one before. She's so hard on herself, and her sakes have this great preciseness. And This brewery is from a part of Hiroshima that's known as the birthplace of Ginjo sake. And so when we talk about Ginjo, or when I talk about Ginjo, it's not about the rice polishing so much as a very cold, slow fermentation. And so with wine, I think we all talk about stressing out the yeast in winemaking and how that can create more nuanced aromas, but all the aroma really comes from stressing out the yeast in sake. And so when you make Ginjo sake, you're working with Ginjo specific yeast that with very soft water, because minerality in water also accelerates fermentation. So you have Ginjo yeast, which is going to promote a very slow cold fermentation, and then this very soft water. So it's going to create extremely exuberant aromas that don't evaporate because the temperature is so low. So this area has some of the softest water in Japan, which is why they had to change the recipe of sake making when they started making sake here. So true Ginjo, this area of Hiroshima is called Akitsu. So true Akitsu Ginjo sake should really jump out of the glass, which this one does. I mean, even from here, I can get the Ginjo aromas. And when you have an unpasteurized sake, it's really brash and vibrant and youthful. So it even turns up the volume a little bit more on Ginjo. There's quite a bit of pineapple, cantaloupe. Unpasteurized sakes are often quite lactic and have a tart yogurt quality, which really comes out here. Very intense floral notes, rose, lily, violet. And it's a little bit savory. There's something, I mean, the thing about unpasteurized sake is it evolves much faster in the bottle than pasteurized sake. So you can start to see notes of maturity in just a couple months time. So this was bottled in January of this year and it's April now. And I do start to get a little bit of like a fresh mushroom and just a hint of smoke. And so this sake in its pasteurized form is not one that I would really say has a lot of umami, but the savory characteristics start to come out as well as that intensity of the nama or raw quality.
Monica, you said some great things that obviously means probably everything Jean-Louis and Eduardo, they probably get it immediately. And I think that's key, what you went into is by, leading this discussion with the tasting, we're able to relate like, oh, okay. So I'm thinking someone who heard your tasting notes would be also like a Sauvignon Blanc drinker, someone who, who can relate to that. Like, I'm just trying to make it relatable for those who are like, I don't know what she just said, but I know the pineapple in yogurt, where can I take from the clues you just gave? And even just breaking down in Ginjo, is that also something that's commonly found in all unpasteurized, or Ginjo, if they see Ginjo in a label, if they relate to that, like they want to look for one?
So what I like to tell consumers is when you stick your nose in a glass of sake, you can usually make a pretty quick decision if it's more on the earthy, savory, umami rich style or more fruity, floral. And in that savory, umami rich style, generally umami and acidity go hand in hand. So you're going to have full body, high acidity, high umami. And in the fruity floral style, which is what we think of as Ginjo style, there's a whole cluster, like in a sake aroma wheel, there would be a whole cluster of aromas associated with Ginjo. So Ginjo is tropical fruit, pastis, anise, fennel, very, very vibrant floral. It's very juicy, where if you're getting like cooked fruit or something that's a little more rustic, that's not Ginjo. So having this really pure, like a lot of purity and a lot of aroma intensity of fruit and floral is considered Ginjo style. I would say that most breweries do make Ginjo styles. There are some who really pride themselves on being very rustic, soulful, not high tone at all. But Ginjo is a very, very common phrase for premium sake.
For premium sake, okay, I was gonna wait till you all went through this to go through quality levels, but you did touch on it a bit just now. So if you were classifying quality, let's just take yours for now. You're saying Ginjo is one of the ones that's higher up there. So can you just give us like an average price point of Ginjo? Like what's the range?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a couple things. So this classification system of Junmai Ginjo, Junmai Dai Ginjo was made really hastily. Premium sake has only been commercially distributed, even in Japan, since 1991. And so sake was around for hundreds of years. But it wasn't until the end of towards the latter half of the 1900s that there was enough like modern equipment and availability of rice for people to start polishing. And that created a level of sake that was so good that it really pushed the industry to start distributing rather than walking down the street to your local brewery. So the sake, like the government, the sake centered government was trying to rush to create these definitions of quality levels. And so they decided that rice polishing would be the most important, which it's probably not. There's a lot of decisions you make during production that do dictate what's in the glass more than rice polishing. Sorry, I'm giving you a long answer here, but I promise.
Oh, it's okay.
So ginjo, so to be ginjo legally, you have to mill away at least 40% of the outer rice grains, so 60% remaining. And the significance of that is that sake rice is a species of rice where the starch is concentrated in the center. So if you're removing 40%, you're not just removing 40% of a grain of rice, you're isolating the starch and you're removing proteins, fats, vitamins, and minerals. But that rice polishing doesn't dictate what happens in the glass. I think of ginjo as a cold, slow fermentation. And so kind of, they do go hand in hand. If you're gonna make the financial investment to mill away that much rice, you're probably gonna be really careful every other step of production. You're going to brew in a small tank for a long time at a cold temperature, very, very precisely managed. The size of the brewery often relates to the cost more than the level that's stated on the bottle. If you're buying sake from a factory that produces millions of cases a year, they're able to make ginjo sake at a very low cost. I've seen ginjo sake from Japan retailing at $12 a bottle. I've also seen ginjo sake from Japan retailing at $60 a bottle. So it kind of depends on the craftsmanship and the scale of the brewery.
The scarcity, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that Eduardo, we'll let you pick it up from here because I don't know which ones you have yet to share, but you could be able to share if your quality level is on the same as Monica or considered.
Actually, similar, but it's a different style. So I brought, and I'm tasting and utterly enjoy this katafune. It's from Takeda Shuzo in Niigata, and it's a Tokobetsu Honjozo Genshu. Say that 10 times. See if you can do
Well,
it.
just say it one time slowly.
One time. Tokobetsu Honjozo Genshu.
I got
So
Kasaboshu.
Tokobetsu means special, and there's a lot of ways to interpret. And I'm sure Jean-Louis and Monica have a better explanation, but basically it's a special sake. They did a higher polishing in this case, closer to a ginjo level, to be precise. Honjozo refers to the brewer's alcohol addition into the sake, which is creates a fantastic style. And often people that are not familiar with sake get scared when they hear this. They're like, whoa, there's alcohol in there? No, I don't want to get that wasted tonight. I'm not drinking that. So but basically what happens is that there's an inclusion of brewer's alcohol or high proof, and it creates a different style. To me, at the end of the day, it's a more uplifted aromatics, very cleansing, bright, in a big picture, almost more wine-like in some ways. And there's a story, which I'll shorten briefly, about Honjozo and how one of the theories says that started. So during the Second World War, there was a shortage of rice in Japan. So brewers and the government had to sit down and they had to come up with an idea to decrease the consumption of rice so they could feed the troops and the civilians. So basically they figured out they can make a regular batch of sake, add some brewer's alcohol, and then water it down. By that creating Honjozo, and that became the only legal way to make in sake for a number of years. But this style, as I said, it just kind of explodes out of the glass. It has a little more precision, and I see it more like a Jaguar XJ67, just like fast, furious, very beautiful generally. So when the ban was over, a lot of breweries decided to go either with both styles or focus on one. But at the end of the day, the alcohol percentage is pretty much similar to junmais, which means pure rice without the alcohol. Anyway, and then the other word is genshu, which genshu is undiluted. So basically you're preserving the real quality, the richness, more flavor out of the sake. A really big percentage of sake gets diluted with water to bring it down. So when you see the word genshu, means not always cask strength, because this one, for instance, even though it's a genshu, it's 18%, but you'll see some out there 20, 22% with a little more packed to the punch. But this one's a beautiful style. It's a 9th generation brewer in Niigata. I love what he's doing. His son's taking over as the next generation, and 9 people working at the brewery, super tiny. The most humble guy. And speaking of IWC, he's won a few awards with this Honjoso sake, which just a fun person to hang out with, and a clear example of Niigata at this style where he likes to express or extract a little more flavor out of the sake. So in a few words, cheers.
Are you both familiar with Eduardo's sake?
I have had katafune a few times. I haven't had the Honjozo Genshu. I do really love the Jaguar reference, and I think that people underestimate Honjozo a lot because Junmai translates into pure rice sake, and so I think as English speakers, we're like, okay, well, we want the pure one instead of the impure, and it's a very deliberate reason, a stylistic reason to add alcohol, and it is to create a more linear, more focused sake that does have that enhances certain aromas and restricts certain impressions. And so and with the Genshu, I like katafune a lot. I find that I think it's offers a little more than what the Niigata style generally offers, which is generalized as being really light and crisp and clean and almost a little watery. So having a Genshu is definitely a little more loud, which I think has more potential for success in the Western market.
And especially with pairings. I mean, if you open the door to pairings, you can do Mexican food, Thai food, you can go Indian food, some curries, and definitely bring it out of the box. And you'll find me in a corner eating a bacon cheeseburger with this sake as well. So.
So does that also mean that the one that you're drinking is also more higher in residual sugar, or?
Not quite on this one. This is focused, I would say it lies in the middle, where it has a bright acidity. It's got a little liveliness in the palate, which for wine drinkers kind of connects that. Just like Monica's sake has that kind of minerality to it. But it kind of lays in the middle. You will find a little faint, like forest floor in there, but it also has like a little lime cyst and a very pleasant richness because of the Genshu that just extends forever. So it's a pretty flexible. If I was to pin it as a wine, I would say Bordeaux Blanc, Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon with a little bit of oak. And it kind of gives that kind of focus and longevity and stamina in the acidity.
You already knew that was my next question, so that's perfect.
Oh, I can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Can't hear me? Sorry.
Now
There we go.
Oh, okay. I didn't even do anything different. I don't know what happened. But yeah, no, I was saying that was my next question. So I'm glad you hit that right away, Eduardo, with the Bordeaux Blanc reference. So Jean-Louis, we're on to you.
Okay, well, basically that's the modern ICK Classic. So that was made actually in its first version, actually back in 2006, when branding sake was not heard of, when breweries were just doing their sake in their corner and not thinking even of exporting and so on. So at the time, when ICK company wanted to introduce sake to more people, to wine lovers especially, the idea was to make sake, which is first of all lower in alcohol, but similar to wine. So that's about 14.7 alcohol. So that means in terms of palate, it's not so heavy, it's quite delicate, and it can go with all sorts of cuisine. So the focus was to go out of the Japanese restaurants, which again, even now, sake is mostly consumed in Japanese restaurants. But the idea, and we're already back in 2006, going to Eastern Blumenthal at the Fat Duck, introducing sake with Italian restaurants, obviously we all heard about umami, which is also applied to wine. So any pairing with tomato, with parmesan, with ham, anything cured and rich in flavor, where sake naturally is higher umami content, basically amino acid. So there is a lot more amino acid in sake than in wine, about 5 times more. And that's create this synergy of flavor. So when working with the chef and me working with restaurants and in restaurants, sake always been the secret weapon, how to convert people who don't know about sake to start knowing and enjoying sake. So you need to have sake which is not so strong. So 14.5, you go to Australia, you have a lot of Chardonnay for even or 15 California mints, which are way above the 15%. So we're really on this similar balance of, okay, it's rich, but it's not so rich that you cannot experiment and develop flavor. Coming back to the product and the producer, because producer is very important. It's made by a Tetsumanke brewery, which is a fairly well-known large-scale brewery, but it's actually one of the oldest in Japan and been around since 1662. This is the third version of the Sake Classic. The first one was just like a plain entry level, and then he moved to Shibori Tate. So Shibori Tate is like a Beaujolais Nouveau, if you prefer, for sake, very
What
fresh.
prefecture is it, Jean-Louis?
Shibori Tate.
Oh no, what prefecture is the brewery at?
Oh, Nada, Yogo.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and basically they use a Miyamizu. So Miyamizu for sake lover is like the sangral of water, because the quality of the water in Japan is very important. And sake, obviously, you cannot make a good sake if you haven't got a good spring. If you make whiskey, you will need a good source of water, and obviously it's a fermented drink, but water is so important. And Miyamizu, back in the medieval Japan in 16th century, that was really the #1 source of spring water, which was making the best sake for the imperial court back in the time. So this sake is made using this spring water, Miyamizu, and it's a blend. Usually sake is usually, we haven't talked too much about the rice, but rice and grapes is something which is good to relate to each other. Obviously, it's two different species, but in the way that there is some species of rice, like Yamane Nishiki, which is the most well-known rice for sake, and that people will always compare to Chardonnay, in the sense that you can express very concentrated, very rich, complex sake. This one is made, it's a blend actually of 3 different rices, but the main dominant is Goyaku Mangoku, which is one of the oldest rice variety in Japan, and which makes some very elegant, very well-rounded, but very refined, very pure, not so bold type of sake. Taste-wise, well, I said it's a sake which is designed to go not just with Japanese food, but also with all sorts of cuisine. And as much as you can have it as an aperitif or through the meal or an after dinner, it's very versatile and it's great. You can serve it 3 ways, because obviously a wine, you will drink it, if it's white wine, it will be cold and acid. But with sake, if it got the right balance between all the different elements, you can enjoy it chilled. If it's like summer, we enjoy nice cold sake. But if it can be the winter, so this one can be warmed up gently. So it just bring on the more savory notes and nutty side, and also room temperature. Versatility is very important, because if it's in this, so you can, when we go to the top sake, Dagenjo is like the Grand Cru of sake. So this, okay, you need to respect it even more, and you don't want to warm it up. Sorry, I was seeing unstable connection, but I think it's okay now. Just a small tremor.
Any, now that you're taking a sip, let us know any tasting notes. I know you just made the reference to rice and Chardonnay. The rice that's your sake is related to, but
Goyaku Mangoku. But actually, for me, I've got something which is a lot more like a Chenin Blanc, actually, but not from South Africa, more like a Loire Chenin Blanc, because I got this beautiful, very ripe. It's not mango, but it's more like a quench. Actually, in the background, I've got a little bit of rose petal, It's very delicate and it's got a very strong mineral feel, but very dry, very clean, very crisp finish at the same time. But you feel the structure, so it's quite savory and you just carry on. And when you swallow, it just like goes on and on. It's like medium persistence, but it finish very
How many
clean.
sakes are they making for you, or how many different SKUs you have?
Oh, basically each batch is about 1,200 bottles, and they make about 5 batch a year.
But only one style, one bottle.
Only one style. Yeah. So it's one
Awesome.
special tank which was selected by a couple of Sommelier and a Japanese sake expert, and with the toji, which obviously the toji is like the head the winemaker. So if you hear the word toji, when we talk about sake, the toji is a reference actually to the person in charge of the winemaking or the sake making. So in this case, that's Mr. Iki back in 2007, who was involved with working with the different rices and the taste and going back and forth with different samples until we find the style which would please wine drinkers. That's the idea.
What's your favorite non-Japanese food with the sake?
I have quite a lot of options. Also, obviously, being from the south of France and not so far from the coast, I love my seafood. So oysters, for me, always works perfectly because you don't want something too heavy. So balance a little bit on the sea breeze side. We have a lot of beautiful prawns. So any prawn dishes, very simply grilled, those kind of things. I will lean more on the seafood, but also have it quite often with chicken. So again, lightly seasoned, nothing even, because for example, when it comes to salad, wine can be sometimes difficult to pair with dressing, but sake actually got the right level of acidity that it doesn't contrast, it doesn't shock. So if you have chicken Caesar salad, for example, which a great classic, which you go to every restaurant in the world and it will have a version or two of or their own version. And I like the chicken Caesar salad because you have Parmesan, which when we talk about umami, Parmesan is one of those very umami-rich food. So you have the chicken, you have the crunch of the salad, the dressing, you use premium olive oil. After you can make all sorts of versions. But good sake, which come with the crunch of the salad and tenderness of the chicken, you have the umami from the Parmesan, and that's all kind of combined together, makes a beautiful match. And it's very unusual because wines can be difficult with dressing. In fact, in the restaurants, we will recommend, okay, you have your salad, maybe you have a citrus cocktail or whatever, margarita even, but then keep the wine for the next course. But with sake, that's what I like working with sake, because you can have it as an aperitif. You can also make some innovative cocktail, why not? You have it with a starter, main course, desserts. You can carry on, so you don't need to go too far. As long as there is enough sake on the list, there is enough to play with. And one important thing for sake, once you open a bottle of sake, you can keep it for, well, sometimes I keep some sake in my wine fridge, which is like just behind me, that the big beast behind, at 13 degrees temperature. And I keep some sake bottles open for 2-3 months and then drink as perfect as the day they were open, which obviously with wine.
That's one of my favorite things to do.
You have to.
And speaking of oysters, sorry to interrupt, but speaking of oysters, I have a guilty pleasure. Monica has this cans of Bushido sake, which is a Genshu from Kyoto, and you open it, pour on top of a freshly shocked oyster, little fleur de sal, call it a day. You have the whole party on your hands.
Exactly.
It's true. When you drink it out of the oyster shell, it's a totally different experience than pairing it with an oyster. I think the first time that someone told me to do this was something that wasn't sake, was with Cercial Madeira. And it was, I would never imagine pairing those two, and it was phenomenal. And so it really inspired me to start trying more savory sakes with oysters as well.
Yeah. No, that's a good tip. I think that they had I worked in Nantucket Food and Wine Festival last year, and they had a section for sake and oysters, of course. And I remember doing all types of, it's a festival. But it was a day that I was just kind of walking around the fairgrounds, and I just noticed that, but I didn't know it was a thing. So now I feel bad, like I missed a portion of an experience. It looks like I should have taken part of.
I mean,
What are you
sake is
drinking,
like
Shah?
For Marina
Yes,
as well.
on to mines. I made sure, I'm like, okay, I got to go through it like how I would normally have any wine here. So you guys, hopefully, am I showing you the right portion of this?
沢の鶴、ジュラク、山名錦. Can you show us the rest of the bottle?
If you could, like this, like you would be able to tell.
Yeah, so Yamada Nishiki. Can you show us the back label?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and you said on the website it's a Tokubetsu Junmai, right?
Whatever you just said. Yes.
Okay, I think you did. I didn't see it listed, but yeah,
Someone
you-
also
The
reads
language is
quite a
so
large scale.
fast. I feel like reading it and knowing the words is like a whole nother, conversation and talk. And it's like intimidating. I mean, I don't speak French, but I'm sure I feel more fluent walking into, a wine bar, just talking fluently about Loire Valley, which just happened to be my favorite French wine region. So I'm glad we're talking about Sauvignon Blanc, Chenin Blanc, and comparing it to Saki's. So to look at this and say, I can tell you right now, it says alcohol is 14 to 15%. And that came off immediately to me when I smelled it, compared to when I'm drinking wines, or white wines especially, was how to adjust beyond the alcohol that's like kicking my nose and, in the face, like I'm getting a kick immediately. But the aromas that I had picked up was lychee. I got like fresh cut grass even. And then even like lily fields, it seemed very like spring in a glass, but very
Floral.
clean, floral, white floral notes. But then when I tasted, there was a roundness to it that kind of switched. It went from all of these white, easy going aromas to now on the palate being more yellow and more riper fruit. So it went from being to chamomile versus being white lilies, for example. And even on the palate, it tastes like pineapple. And Monica, I don't know the difference between I don't know if you mentioned what style of pineapple, but in this case, this one still tastes more like white or underripe pineapple versus being
So
like
fresh cut green pineapple, pretty.
Yeah. Like, oh no, I cut this too early, and I don't know for yours, if yours was more riper, like you're sitting in, New Zealand.
yeah, mine's very juicy.
Okay, yeah. So this is not that. On the color, I did have white background somewhere. Okay, here we go. You can see easily, very clear.
Oh yeah.
And so for me, as having you guys as the experts on, and then just kind of just going through it the same way I would go through wine, thinking about the alcohol, thinking about the mouthfeel, I would, it was hard for me to kind of match this up with a wine. I don't know if it's because the alcohol was so high, or just the, Gewürztraminer, when you think of lychee immediately, when you talk about aromas. But it would also, easily can be compared to a Pinot Blanc from Alsace, or even a Riesling. But I would say Riesling's is way more aromatic, and so is Gewürztraminer than what I have. But if I was kind of like, chained to give someone this in the restaurant while serving, and I know there's probably some, and I don't know how you all feel about comparing it to wine, but I know there's some sake experts who are going to listen to this or hear this and go, oh God, she's doing what every wine expert do, forcing us to turn this, compare this to wine. But I guess it's the easiest way to be able to get people to believe.
That's a great way to compare it.
Yeah, in the grape. I said in grape. I'm sorry, in the sake. And obviously,
if you were talking Riesling, would you say trocken, or would you say more sparkling?
Oh yeah, definitely dry. So it's going to be the most dry style. The alcohol kills all of that, and it has this kind of character on the finish that it's better as a aperitif. I would not pair it with food. It's this cleansing of the palate. So like if he was having a multi-course dish, this is a good way to like serve this sake. Like if you wanted to switch to a big entree or to a dessert, that I would serve this to do like a cleansing. And I don't usually know when or what from the labels you can tell if you should serve this hot or if you should serve this cold, but I'm drinking this one chilled. But I don't know, from the information you just heard about the label, if you also gathered, am I drinking it correctly versus should it have been warm?
So
Usually earthier styles do better with a little warmth. Go ahead, Monica.
I just cheated and did a quick Google of the sake because I have not had the Jitsuraku from Sawanatsuru, and it looks like it's a Kimoto Tokubetsu Junmai. Are you getting anything other than fruit and floral and grassy? Like, are you getting any cereal or grain notes like steamed rice or
Nutty.
toasted cereal? Or
steamed rice for sure. I guess it's just not probably in my lexicon of words. Or so when I'm talking about wine, but steamed rice, now that you said it. But it's almost like if someone had wine and told me, oh, I get grapes. I guess in sake, I think talking about rice sounds like remedial. I don't know.
no, not all sake smells like rice. And then Kimoto sakes, Kimoto and Yamahai often have more pronounced lactic notes. Are you getting any milk or cream or yogurt or fresh cheese or creaminess on the palate?
On the palate, because of the roundness, I would definitely say creamy. But I would say would feel more like, if you're gonna compare it to cheese, more like a sour cream.
Mm-hmm. Like a tart lactic.
Yeah. Or even like, I'm imagining like a baked potato with sour cream and chives on top. Like it's more of that feel than it is of like, Comté, or,
Right. And
so.
is it straight out of the fridge right now, temperature wise?
No, I took it out probably 30 minutes before we went live. So it can kind of adjust.
It sounds like what's worth giving it a shot to warm it up a little bit.
Okay.
That's a candidate. Jean-Louis, how are you drinking yours? What temperature?
Oh, chilled.
Nice.
Yeah, but obviously since the beginning of I kept the bottle next to me, so now it's getting gently at room temperature. So it's getting a bit more savory, it's getting a bit more rounder, a bit more. I feel more the body, obviously, because when you get warmer, you have a feel of the alcohol. It will be the same with the wine. You take a bottle of wine out, which is very, very chilled, and okay, that's everything kept in, like in gel, so it doesn't expand too much. But when it gets warmer, then the alcohol expands, so you got this more mouthfeel sensation coming up. So that's why in the restaurants, especially, it's very important the way the sommelier or the waiters look at your bottle of sake and monitoring the temperature on a regular basis. So you have to play exactly. So you, as a consumer, if you go in restaurants, you need to be able to express it in a way that you can tell the waiter, I like my sake to at certain temperature. And if you feel it's not what you want, then you've got right. So you can say, chill it more, or actually take it out of the ice and change the glassware, because quite often you go to places and we're still stuck to the past, and they will give you a small ochoko. The ochoko is the small cup, which we see a lot in very traditional Japanese places. Also, they're very cute, very kawaii, and it's concept people like. And you have Eduardo got some very good examples. But the problem with it, you cannot really express the flavor. You cannot really shake it around. And with a good sake, really, for us, sake is very much like a good wine. So we need to be able to express it, play around, look at the color. And it's all those things you cannot do with a cup. So when you have a good wine glass, you can really express the full sensation. And it's also, I remember when I started working in the restaurants, there was mostly Russian customers. And for them, sake, there was spirit. They didn't care. So they were just like knocking down, but without even having any thoughts about what they were drinking. And money was not the problem. They were like spending a lot of money on sake, but they were just not appreciating because no one was telling them how to appreciate. And it's all like from 15 years ago when this movement of sake sommelier started to really happen. I remember when I started, maybe we were like 3 or 4 sake sommelier in the whole country. Now I think, well, obviously with the virus, it's difficult to say how many we are now, but we are definitely more than 20, 30 sake sommelier in London. So compared to 3 about 10 years ago, that reflects really the size and the appreciation of premium sake, not just in Japanese restaurants, even if it's still the majority, but many more fine dining restaurants also have been embracing sake. And sommeliers, which are always very curious by nature, are always very inclined. And I mean, we see it when we do the London Sake Challenge. All the people we have, which are all certified sake sommelier. Basically,
try to do a few rapid fire questions to you guys in this last 15 minutes or so. Who knows what kind of discussions may come from them, but I'm gonna try to keep it. Hopefully they're easy to answer. So since we're talking about temperature, answer hot or cold? Sake, how do you like it? Hot or cold?
It depends.
Cold. Mostly, but yeah, it depends. It totally. You can do 3 different dishes with the proper sake and 3 different temperatures, and pair all 3 dishes. Like if you're gonna do very big picture, braised pork with the warmer style sake, and then you do a little salmon sashimi with the room temperature, and then you do a salad or an oyster with the cold. So it's an amazing thing about sake.
This is totally up to you. Whatever perfect moment you want to have. I remember when I asked this question to the California girls, and they got all, I was like, this is your first day out of quarantine, and you're about to go have your first sake outside of your house. What in your head would you prefer to have that sake hot or cold at your first moment?
What I'm drinking right now, cold.
Cold, okay. Eduardo, keep it cold, or you want to warm it up?
I'm in love with Beverage as a movie. Like you're watching the whole start and the climax and how it develops. So I would start cold and let it come to room temperature in the glass if it lasts.
Okay. Jean-Louis, hot or cold?
Well, it's same. I started cold, and now I started to be very chill. So I'm going to keep going with the flow, and also getting at room temperature. It just like express a more sensual aspect of it, a much more softer side of the grain of rice, rather than a more strict version. Now it's getting a bit more rounder and softer. I've really feel the grain of the rice. So I will just like keep it going with the flow. I had a good lunch, so I don't feel like eating that much. So I think the sake will be my dinner actually.
Okay. We all, I think, are having sake from Japan. Am I correct?
Yes.
So it's kind of hard to compare the rest of the world to Japan, but let's just say, let's forget Japan at this moment. If you was having sake from anywhere else, on me, I'm sending you a bottle. Where and why? Not including Japan.
For me, it would be, I have two big favorites. Although, I mean, it's made all over the world. There's some amazing wine or sake being made in England, for instance, or Denmark and stuff. For me, there's 2 that you can blind me on, and I can, it's like heaven. There's Den Sake in Oakland, which is a super tiny microbrewery, outstanding, super high acid.
Oakland, California, for those who.
Oakland, California, right here. And the other one is Nami Sake in Mexico, out of all places, which is outstanding, has got the salinity, minerality, really beautiful style of sake.
Okay. Anybody else? What?
I'm gonna say Brooklyn Cura. It is in my backyard. I live in New York City, and I do happen to work with them a little bit on their national distribution. But they really follow the craft beer model, where they have a tap room and they have so many tap room only releases, and so you can see they experiment in ways that I don't even see happening in Japan, like using very heavily citric acid hopped yeast or koji, and blending so many different types of yeast. And I feel like they've really created an identity for their sake as Brooklyn made, instead of trying to be a Japanese sake.
Yeah, perfect. I visited there and had a blast. Jean-Louis?
And for me, obviously being French, actually there is this producer called Les Larmes du Levant. So it's a beautiful microbrewery in center of France, not far from the Rhone, between Rhone and Burgundy. And they make this sake, I was trying to remember the name, Les Vagues, I think, yeah, La Vague, actually the wave. and it's just beautiful, clean, balanced, refreshing. It goes so well with French cuisine and with cheese. I'm always a big fan of. We talk always about wine and cheese, but sake and cheese is one of those secret pleasure, which is quite easy to spend a whole evening just having. I could almost like dribble just thinking about a nice plate of cheese, and especially blue cheese with very rich, unctuous type of sake. And so, yeah, exploring cheese and sake is definitely fun. And we can play with different temperatures with different cheeses. But yeah, this brew in France, they've been around for quite a few years now, and they've gotten quite a good group of followers, not just in France, but like all over the world. So yeah.
I feel like I need the names of everyone's that I'm not familiar with, so we can promote these non-Japanese brew. Are they still called brewmasters?
Yeah,
Okay.
the brewmasters.
Oh, the doji, yes. So
Doji.
so that everyone can know about them as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that was just kind of like a quick version, kind of see what you guys are thinking. I mentioned at the beginning that I saw a chart shared on Nielsen that US is basically skyrocketing for import of Japanese sake, and then trailing behind or competing is China / Hong Kong. And then after that, I believe it was Taiwan, if my memory serves me correctly. So, why not Europe, Jean-Louis? And why is the US doing so?
Well, obviously, the UK is the leading country in Europe in terms of import of sake. We'll always say we're 10 years behind the US, but we've been making up ground, and import of sake have been very steady. I mean, compared to when I really started being serious about sake 15 years ago, import have been doubling in size every year. There is many companies now importing sake, playing the games, knocking the doors to all sorts of restaurants. So the market have been very steady. It's well above the 1 million bottles now. So yeah, it's quite a strong market.
I would say
UK
definitely
within Europe. I'm sorry, just to clarify, you're saying the UK market is strong.
Yeah, compared to Europe, that's definitely the #1 country where you can find a wide range of sake. There is many competitions. Education is very strong. There is the Sake Sommelier Association. They said there is many educators providing. So anybody who want to learn about sake, tend a lot to come to London for the sake scene. Also a lot of events, festivals.
What's the second market in Europe outside of UK?
Italy seems to be quite strong. Surprisingly, we wouldn't associate Italy. We wouldn't think about Italy, but they are very, very dynamic in terms of education. They're passionate about the drinks. They do festivals, other competitions. So obviously Norway, Scandinavian countries that we will expect with the climate they have, and they just love drinking. So
but France is pretty strong too, right? And they have one of the biggest festivals outside of Japan.
Oh, in France?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, from my experience, UK definitely leading the charts, and then France and slightly behind Italy in terms of traction and imports. And I've been studying the numbers, and I have a few friends in those markets that have been creating some synergy. But definitely UK, you have some wine people and writers and critics that have gotten behind sake, even going further, writing books about it, and has become a big piece. I mean, Jancis Robinson has been some trailing it slightly behind or pushing for sake. Anthony Rose, I mean, and IWC making a huge impact for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so definitely UK, I would say. But yeah, outside of the US, I think UK is pretty much there in terms of active promotion and passion, really strong interest and
why the US, guys? What's calling Americans?
Because people like Monica.
Is that because of Monica?
People like Monica that are really pushing and educating and bringing amazing sakes into the US, and have created this big realm of products that other people are trailing behind and just only making it stronger. But Monica.
I think that Japanese food was popular and widespread in the US before it was in Europe. And I mean, we've had sushi restaurants in the US for 30 years now in most of the major markets. And they're also, the Japanese community is also really concentrated on the east and west coast of the US. And I think it's also, you know, in London, for example, as John Louis mentioned, there's so many sake experts in London and there's so many people working so hard, but it's very complicated with the off premise and buying sake in retail in the UK. And it's still, you know, you still can't go to most wine shops in the UK and find good sake. It's very, very specialized. There are a lot of importers that can sell direct. There are a couple stores, but you know, other than restaurants that can be quite expensive, it's hard to find a really good bottle and drink it at home, even in the last few years, I think. And so the US model it makes sake a little more accessible by having it available at retail pricing.
Yeah. Well, now you talk about retail pricing. I mean, to give you an idea, I mean, that's something that's thanks, I was going to say thanks to Amazon, but actually the online sales of sake have been like really growing really strongly, even compared to retail. So I think gradually, even now what's going on with the virus and the lockdown, I noticed on my side a massive increase of online sales. And that's something that's retail for between 30 and 40 pounds online. So, okay, compared to a Pinot Grigio, that will be quite expensive, but for someone who drink a good bottle of regular Burgundy Chardonnay, that wouldn't be like a big jump. Having either to choose a good bottle of sake or a good bottle of Burgundy, that would be in the region. So definitely the market is not for someone who drink mass-produced wines and who just like to be drunk, but for someone who appreciate a good drink, sake within those price bounds, 30, 40 pounds, you find even sake from, I think, around 20, 25 pounds. And that's kind of retail prices that people are say, why not, and get comfortable. The only big advantage with the sake that's it's very consistent because of the manufacturing process. So it's very consistent. It's really the skill of the toji, like Monica mentioned about the beautiful sake she's drinking. When you have someone at the helm of a brewery for like 30 years, or even 5 years, 10 years, I mean, it takes at least a decade for someone to really become a toji, brewmaster. So once they get there, they don't go anywhere else. They're happy and they make the sake with their passion and they're consistent in the style. They don't change. If they want to make something different, they will make a different cuvée, a different bottling. But whenever they bottle within certain brand, will always be consistent. And that's a great selling point, because wherever you go in the world, if you find the brand that you like, you will know that the taste will be the same. As opposite with wine, you have variation from the vintage, a winemaker change or is real, unfortunately, and young kid arrive and want to do a revolution and will change completely the style of the wine. So wine can be irregular from one year to another one, but with the sake, as long as it's the same toji. Also, I think that always be good actually for the brewers to always put the toji at the front, because you could check quickly the label and you know it's always the same maker, because that's really the toji which all the keys, the secrets to really make a good bottle of sake. So as long as you've got the same toji, you know your sake wherever you're in the world will be the same. And that's one of the great.
When we talk about wine and people come into the wine shops, and I remember, you know, the sales floor, and people were just eager to like learn everything I know, like in 5 seconds. And I would say, let's go with like the entry level, you know, since you just talked about Burgundy. Before I start like trying to sell you on a $50 Burgundy, let's start just getting you to appreciate, you know, Pinot Noir in a way, you know. So let's, you know, is there anything with, and I guess I'll leave this for two different types of person. If there's someone who is a wine enthusiast and they're interested in sake, what would you consider some keywords for them to look on a bottle to find? I don't know if they would typically be written in English or in Japanese, but what are some keywords you all think they should look for like, this is entry basic level, And you can like start getting to more complex ones because they're all going to look complex with Japanese characters everywhere, unless they know what to look for in, I guess, what is translated in some sort on the bottle for a wine drinker, and then also for a beer drinker, because I think we have this, obviously with words like brewmaster and brewery, we end up hearing like, oh, okay, wine people may think it's more like beer, and then beer people think that it's more like wine. You know, some people even get it confused as rice wine, you know, and that's something completely different if you didn't know that already. So how do we get the two groups of people to kind of find their own entry level? Which style of words would be more for someone who's a beer lover and for someone who's a wine lover that they can find?
I'd say unless you're planning on just doing shots or sake bombs, stay away from the box sake or the cheap stuff. Unless you're a cook with it. But I'd say in my personal, Junmai Ginjo or Ginjo is a great entryway. And if you're gonna start with something, look for those words at the store in the premium realm. If you're a hoppy IPA beer drinker, go more towards a Junmai or Honjozo from a little more artisanal style. And if you're more into refined wines and elegant stuff, go Junmai Ginjo. And I'm interested what you guys think. That's my answer.
I think those are great guidelines. Yeah, I think that like white wine drinkers probably prefer more of a vibrant, fruity ginjo style, and more malty beer drinkers, more earthy red wine drinkers probably like something like Kimoto or Yamahai. I would say that in general, you should try to pay attention to the condition that your sake appears to be in. There are a lot of wine stores that have had a few bottles of sake on the shelf for 5 years and they forgot that they were even there. And I think that you can see when the bottles are on the bottom shelf and they're covered in dust and there's no information about the sake, the retailer doesn't seem to know anything. Sake generally, depending, I mean, if it is properly pasteurized, generally you want to drink it in about 18 months after it's bottled. So looking for an importer statement, a bottling date, would give you the most peace of mind, but not all importers put bottling dates on. So I would just try to use your common sense trying to observe the condition that it appears to be in.
Yeah, if you see any discoloration on the label, that's definitely a no-go.
Yeah.
And if you see the spiders between the bottle, that's definitely a no-go.
Oh, so there's no level of like, how we say, age like fine wine. Sake is not that. There's
Because
no,
I love aged sake. I have a few bottles in my fridge that I've collected over the years, and a couple of friends got me into doing this. And one of them was a producer in Niigata, where the first time I visited him, we did a retrospective of vintages. And that's the first time I had Explorer. It was like a 07, 08, 09. This is like 3 years ago. And properly stored at a cold temperature, away from sunlight, it could be beautiful. But then if you have any factor affecting it, if the room where you have it is heated, then you can start seeing some just going bad. But I personally enjoy opening back vintages as much as I love fresh sake. But that's just me. I'm just crazy like that.
Yes, but there is always one thing which is consistent, whether the label is in Japanese or English or French. When you look, you will always find a bottling date, which work a bit actually like the vintage. So especially if you go in a shop, that will be always a very good indication. If you see, also, okay, it looks like dated and it looks like it was made like 100 years ago, maybe stay away from it. But whether
mine don't say, I don't think mine say bottle and date, but there is a date here, however, it says FA next to it. It says 11/2019, so I would assume November 2019, and it has the letters FA next to it. But it doesn't say specifically that's the bottling date. Is that to be assumed?
It's the bottling date.
Okay.
Yeah, usually that's a stamp.
Yeah, but I think the key thing really for aging sake is to keep it in the fridge. I mean, this bottle, which is from 2006, and I've been drinking one of those about 4 months ago, and I was still drinking beautifully. But this one, I think you really need to care about sake as the same way as you care about wine. So protecting from the light, definitely, because the light is the enemy of any drinks, except maybe spirits. But you wouldn't keep red wine or nice white wine under straight under the windows in the sun, because the light's just going to destroy the product. And it's the same with sake. If it stays under the sunlight, direct UV just kill it. It ages very quickly. If you keep, and that's basically, that first version was just a simple Fuchu premium, but still Fuchu is really like table wine almost, if you prefer. And these have been in a wine fridge and in cellars for all, well, 2006. So yeah, at least like 15 years or so. And basically they still drink like if it was made yesterday. So the in the dark, low temperature, like a cellar temperature, and you can keep even ordinary sake as long as it is well made and there is a balance. It's like everything. If your wine is balanced at the beginning, it's going to age well. If there is something too much acidity or too much sugar or too much alcohol, that's not going to age well. So
And that's and it's funny because you actually showed, you know, should it be on its, or should it be flat, or should it be upright? I actually thought it was supposed to be upright.
Upright.
Okay,
Yeah.
for storage.
For
Okay.
wine, it's different because you have a cork and oxygen
course.
exchange. But for sake, you're pretty controlled with the stilton, with the cap.
yeah, but it's still okay to light on the bottle because I'm seeing a wine fridge. Yeah, don't want just to make chef just for it. Just mix it up. Let's make it fun when you look in your wine cellar and you just put the blindfold, you open the door. Okay, whatever you pick, you drink. Shut the mango. Too bad. Okay. Red bottle of sake. Okay, fine. You make it fun. It's good to mix it up anyway.
Thanks, guys, for
any-
joining me
yeah,
from
please.
London, California, and Monica right here in New York. If there's any last minute things you want to share, either whether it's upcoming projects, again, everyone, their information is right on my website. If you want to go directly to the link or Instagrams, you can find it straight at chamccoy.com. And we have it in the child list section, and you will see the beautiful Japanese sake store as one of the pictures to know where everything's at. So if there's any final comments, guys, this will be the time before we do our cheers.
I'd
Well, I
say
think-
support sake, whether it's your local brewery or some from Japan or whatever, but start exploring it and share it with your friends. It's definitely a great conversation starter. You don't have to be a super geek about it and know everything about it. Just enjoy it. Open a bottle, try with pizza, try with a hamburger, whatever it is, and just make it a daily thing. And it's an amazing thing.
It's funny you say that because I actually had rosé sake for the first time. We didn't talk about it, but I was like, yes. We
That's
served that
fun
at the restaurant I worked with in Portugal. We actually had a rosé sake, and I was like, where has this been my whole life? But yeah, try it, try it with pizza, do anything. Sorry, Monica, I cut you off.
Oh, no, not at all. I just wanted to thank you, Cha, for putting this together. The sake community, even though we're spread far apart, we're still very close knit, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. It's so nice to see Don Louis after quite some time, and Eduardo, I'm always very happy when I get to see you, whether it's in Japan or the US. So especially right now when we're all kind of isolated from each other, it's a great way to connect. So thank you.
How's your family? I don't know if you have any left still in Japan. I don't know the current situation in Japan, but anything that we should be aware of? How is things going in the country?
It's been a rough year in Japan. My parents live in Asia, but they spend most of their time in Thailand, where they are quarantining right now because the COVID cases are very low there, and they live in kind of a remote part of northern Thailand. But for Japanese sake brewers, it's been a very tough year. I mean, the top 5 export markets for sake, the US is #1, but then we have Korea, China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. And due to trade tensions between Korea and Japan, Korea hasn't even ordered Japanese beer in over 6 months, like no Sapporo, Asahi, anything. So there's no sake exports to Korea. Due to COVID, they haven't shipped any sake to China, Hong Kong, or Taiwan. And so it was kind of this, I was in Japan last month and in February, and it was before the wheels came off in the US. And so I was like, we're gonna help you get through this. And like, we're gonna work as hard as we can to support you. And then I came home and the whole country shut down. So my heart really goes out to our producers. I know that they were in the middle of, some people had to stop in the middle of production because they ran out of funds. And so Japan has endured a lot of different tragedies over the years, and so I know that they're going to be fine, but it's hard to watch.
Mm.
John Louis?
Oh, sorry, your sound went down a bit. Well, I think at least one of the great thing, and I think we're all getting used to those new tools. We're all rushing to get proper cameras because we realize pictures from a laptop is actually pretty loosey. So we're all getting equipped, and I think the online community, or like what your project you're developing now, are great things, and it can only help at least to maintain the awareness and sustain the curiosity. And so when things can resume to normal, I think it will help actually to get the ship going, because of the online community. And okay, looking people drinking, it's a bit like window shopping, and you look at the people and you think, wait, I want to, and you almost, I'm sure you have some desperate people jumping at a screen and trying to sip from the computer and being crazy.
Trying to sip from the computer. I love that.
So maybe that will be the future in another generation, when they can transfer the flavor. I think there was already some experiment that you talk about flavor and you can release the pheromone through a device, and that will be great. Probably that will be the future for wine and drinks, that you can experiment at least the flavor and the aroma being released. But time will tell. But I think technology got a great things to do and to play. So I think it's important for all of us to embrace technology and education, especially. And that's going to be so important as well. The lockdown, until someone get the vaccine sorted, I don't really see restaurants, at least in London, being able to reopen. People will be scared to go out properly until they know that okay, they don't have to wear a mask. And I mean, try to sip the sake through maybe with a little straw, but no, it's not sexy at all. You can have a mask and have a romantic dinner for two in the restaurants. Imagine Valentine in lockdown.
All right, John, we're trying to be positive here. We hope we can make it to Valentine's Day where we're not wearing masks.
So anyway, I think the future is online, both for sales and promotions, and we should just like embrace technology and go for it.
Yes,
and share the gospel.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. I didn't want it to make it all, let's talk about what's happening in Japan. And Chris Hughes fell sick last night and was not able to join me on the Instagram Live, but we are going to do a class for folks about sake. That's just going to be a 101. And that's why I didn't want to take up this time with you guys to like break down all the classifications. I'll do that separately with him. So those of you who are watching this and you're interested, shoot me over your email or send me a message from my website, and I'll be able to get you on the roster for that class. But just to get people, like what Eduardo was back to what he was saying, just start, and I think people are so intimidated because I think not that Japanese culture seems intimidating, but the language is just like, I have no idea how to look at this and know what's the difference between a $60 bottle or a $10 bottle. So, and you don't know where to start, there's some easy visuals
wines,
people can look at when they look at wine. They see French words, they think, oh, it's French, it must be fancy, even if it's crazy, but at least some of it is that starts them out. But for some reason with sake, I think people are not paying attention at all as a category. And then there's some people who are diehard into the culture who are obviously driving up, the sake exports. So sorry, Eduardo, what you was mentioning?
I was just saying, if it's like the first time you drank wine or you go on the wine list, you're not that educated on it. Just kind of go for the middle, open that door, and then just go from there and start venturing out and see which way you want to do, and rely on the experts and ask questions.
Right. Yeah. Follow these guys on Instagram. Obviously, they always posting the good stuff. So that's an easy way to start. Go seeking out the ones they're drinking. But yeah, so for us to connect to Asia in this way, where the Western world keep looking at this as a Asian specific pandemic that spread. and sending so much, hate that way. I think this is an opportunity, or why I thought this is important to have the sake tasting now, because we're all connected. And then with this being a beverage tasting virtual event, I wanted to make sure we send some love to Japan. So please support Japan, continue to drink sake and learn about it. And thank you all for being on.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Like, I'm at the bottom. I need to refill. Let me
Great
cheers
seeing
with
you
my
guys.
bottle too.
It's a
Cheers.
treat. Cheers.
Kampai.
Thanks for having us.
Let me